Another story now, and we'll turn our attention to the US, where the president there, Donald Trump's former campaign manager and an associate, have pleaded not guilty to charges of conspiracy and money laundering, filed by the Special Counsel investigating allegations of Russian interference in last year's election. Paul Manafort and Rick Gates appeared in a federal district court in Washington. Meanwhile, it's been announced that a third former Trump advisor, George Papadopoulos, pleaded guilty earlier this month to lying to the FBI. These developments mark a sharp escalation in U.S. Justice Department's Special Counsel Robert Mueller's 5-month-old investigation into alleged Russian efforts to tilt the election in Trump's favor and into potential collusion by Trump aides. Our SABC News correspondent in New York, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, takes a look at the saga for us. And he began by first asking how the Trump office is taking the news.
The president, very quick on the draw here, tweeting earlier, once this announcement was made, that sorry, quote, sorry, but this is years ago, before Paul Manafort was part of the Trump campaign. But why aren't crooked Hillary and the Democrats the focus, question mark. Next tweet, no collusion, exclamation mark. We also heard a short time ago from his spokesperson, the White House press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She basically says that these charges have nothing to do, they're not directly related to the Trump campaign. It has nothing to do with the campaign. Basically, on the Papadopoulos case, he lied about a meeting that had absolutely nothing to do with the campaign, she says, something that doesn't, quote, have to do with us. So we're seeing this pushback from them, saying basically we have not been mentioned in these indictments, and to a certain extent they are absolutely correct. There is no smoking gun in these indictments that speaks directly to this allegation that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin. But what these charges do is to raise questions about the conduct of certain individuals in that campaign. And as one analyst said earlier, you know, using a Game of Thrones analogy, Peter, winter is coming for this White House. This really is the beginning of as we suspect, more indictments and more charges to be brought against officials, certainly that will link to the Trump campaign.
So at the moment, it's more an embarrassment to the president that he has these figures that were associated with him. But at the moment, it's nothing more than an irritation. But as you say, things are getting closer and closer, and perhaps people are waiting for that connection that actually puts the president or someone to these three people.
Well, Peter, I mean, if you look over the last 9 months, the duration of this presidency, from the get-go, the Trump campaign has called this Russia link, this allegation of Russian collusion a hoax, that it is made up by the Democrats to justify their loss in this historic loss in the November election last year. But what you then find out is journalistic press investigations that have led to a drip of information that contradicts the narrative coming out of the White House. For example, they said that they never met, none of their campaign staff met with any Russians. There was no collusion. And so from media reports, the indictment against George Papadopoulos counters that. We remember President Donald Trump's son, Donald Jr., is also known from media reports to have met with a Russian lawyer with close links to the Kremlin, who promised to have some dirt on Hillary Clinton. So we're seeing this drip of information coming out, and this will very much be the focus of Robert S. Mueller and the Special Counsel's investigation, despite what the president says.
All right, so what's likely to happen now? Help us understand what is an indictment and what's the process after this?
Well, the indictment is brought after a grand jury. Essentially, jurors are gathered in a room and the evidence is presented to them, and then those jurors decide whether the special prosecutor or a federal prosecutor in most instances can proceed with the charges. Is there a winnable case? Is there a case to answer? That is what a grand jury has already decided. And so, just moments ago, breaking news right now, Peter, is that the attorneys for Paul Manafort and for Rick Gates have entered pleas of not guilty. So there will be a defense defense here. There will be a trial, and that's kind of where we go to next year. There will be, it'll probably only happen next year. These things take many, many months. There will be discovery. The defense will want to see that discovery, and then they'll go to trial. And Paul Manafort, despite the 18 million that he is said to have laundered, has a lot of money, and I imagine he will put up a strong defense to squash these charges. But it's unlikely that he will come and walk away with this without any charges or certainly any conviction, given the grand jury indictment that has already passed via the Special Counsel.
Sherwin Bryce-Pease taking us through what is happening in the US with that saga. So that was Peter Ndoro in conversation with Sherwin Bryce-Pease, and that, of course, happened during the news bulletin last night. So